Before we jump into the video today, I want to give a huge shout out to the extremely talented artist Decay for allowing me to use his amazing Doldren render for this video thumbnail. If you want to support an extremely talented artist and someone who's got a great Spacelord sense of humor, I recommend you check out his work on Twitter, which I'll link in the description below. This guy's seriously brilliant, and I can tell he puts hours in his work to bring it to life. But without further ado, let's jump into the overview. Dismembering, mutilating, and outright annihilating humans are some of Doldren's favorite pastimes. Never has there been someone who took more pleasure in the infliction of despair. Doldren sees all others beneath him, and often labels anyone without a natural predator instinct as filth, only to find use in the beautiful shower of blood that their vessels might create when he's done with them. Okay, maybe I've been playing Doldren too long. What's up everybody, today we'll be discussing the Reaper of Souls himself, Doldren, a broken planet local with an unquenchable thirst for blood. We'll start with his ability first. Doldren leaves his husk, transferring his consciousness into a floating blue sphere, which can travel the map at a slightly faster speed than the Rage's typical run speed. While astral projecting, Doldren's sphere is both invisible to enemies and antagonists included, while also being unable to be damaged. Doldren's body, however, is left exposed while using this ability, and the amount of olive required to perform such a feat will render Doldren's physical body stationary and full stressed. Astral projection is a great tool for sneaking behind enemy lines though, scoping out the competition and even stealth killing enemies. The ability graphic beside the sphere will determine when Doldren is capable of stepping out of the shadows and surprising a foe. He can only materialize within a specific 4 to 5 proximity of an enemy, so careful consideration of when you choose to attack is key, as enemies are actually quite capable of countering his assassination attempts. Doldren can also recall the sphere back to his body by holding down the ability key, which can also be used as an angler fish tactic. The angler fish tactic is essentially drawing players or adds to your location while staying within the vicinity of your husk to defend it. The timing on it is extremely precise though, so I wouldn't advise it until you're very familiar with Doldren's ability. Astral projection has a number of functions outside of the simple map navigation. With certain cards, the sphere can even serve as a damage amplifier for teammates or a small health booster. It can be used to teleport away from incoming danger or even put enemy players into a defensive mindset if aware of your astral state. When Doldren's sphere is near an enemy player, a faint audio cue can be heard indicating his presence. If you're on the receiving end of a Doldren's assaults, try to learn whether the player opens with a strike or a grapple, and learn to counter accordingly. Doldren's first weapon on the list is the KLT, a 3-magazine revolver with a high crit damage on headshots. This weapon features a suppressor mechanic as well. If you wait 1 second before firing, you can fire without raising your stress level, allowing you to keep relative safety. The weapon can be upgraded into a classic 6-shooter with some investment in the arsenal property, but with Doldren's reload cards, you should have a full clip relatively often. This weapon requires a degree of precision and the ability to snap to and eliminate targets very quickly. Even when not enhanced, the KLT can often one-shot war dogs, provide huge damage on elites, and surprise enemy players with its critical properties. It's one of his best weapons, and quite a treat to have access to so immediately. His second tool is the JK5, a submachine gun that fires with increased accuracy the longer you hold down the trigger. Weird, right? And while this weapon shows potential for crit chance, it ultimately falls flat as one of his weaker guns. The initially small clip size ends the party before it even gets started, and the ability to accurately land all shots during a firefight can prove difficult. I asked some friends of mine to try out the weapon damage properties of the JK5, with our build as 8 out of 14 in arsenal, 6 out of 14 in lethal, and 14 out of 14 in effective. The weapon test went as follows. We found that body damage to the aliens was relatively decent, damage to the war dog center mass was also decent, damage to the Hades division center mass took way too much time and would ultimately lead to a player being flanked or shot down while spending the time, and damage to the 5th Council just took way too long altogether. When switching it up to headshot damage, the crits showed their colors, downing the alien faction in just over a second, the war dogs in a little over that, The Hades division proved much faster to take down as opposed to the body shots, and the 5th Council followed suit. So ultimately, landing headshots with this thing's your best bet, and I can see it being extremely situational in its use overall, i.e. flanking an alien in cover, and playing it safe with some distance, moderately placed headshots. Moving on to the last and most complex weapon in Doldren's toolkit is the Bloody Mary, which finds its unique and gimmicky function in the form of a crit chance minigame that determines how much damage the rest of your clip will do. It's a semi-automatic pistol that has an undeniably satisfying feel to its firing mechanism. Landing a shot when the weapon's graphic is at its lowest will fill up the left side of the bar as multiplied damage. If you can fill up the bar entirely, you'll reach the weapon's full potential. This weapon can feel quite unwieldy at first and will often draw your attention more to its minigame and less to your actual combat effectiveness, so I'd recommend going into the training mode and playing around with it for a bit before taking it into an actual scenario. Doldren can be played a variety of ways, as a support, a flanker, an objective player, etc. I build him according to the gun I'm using, but I recommend nearly any player learning Doldren should initially always use abnegation, which will keep you in the fight for a lot longer. My KLT build revolves around the patient for the faction card, increasing the damage of my strikes after 6 seconds. This is also known as the one punch build. I experimented with this build's viability by using it against each faction. All factions tend to go down in one hit, save the Hades division, so be careful when engaging them with this tactic. For the character card, I use one called Algor Mortis, which shuts off my stress meter entirely while using astral projection. This leaves enemies unaware of my presence for 10 seconds at base, and a whole 30 seconds at 5 stacks. This build works extremely well with my antagonist playstyle, as it leaves raiders clueless to my whereabouts until I'm ready to strike.
Any last words, raiders?
As an antagonist, Doldren's a malicious pick. Focusing on isolated targets and staying mobile will prove extremely useful. Your melee skills are going to have to be rather sharp though, and the ability to analyze, learn, and then predict how players will react to your presence is vital to your success. Also become familiar with your invulnerability frames after an execution. Doldren can't exactly escape quickly, so if you choose to attack a raider, surrounded by friends, you need to know exactly how long you'll be invulnerable before you can make a move. Try running around corners, jumping to a different elevation, or finding a corner to prepare a grab. Due to his low stress, Doldren can disappear rather quickly out of line of sight, so experiment with these strengths. Doldren's weakness takes the form of his low health pool and his exposure while casting astral projection, and unless you have the Algor Mortis, you'll have to understand that time is of the essence once you initiate his ability, as raiders will often swarm to your location to take you out. If possible, do not engage raiders in a straight up fight when they know you're coming. Be patient, stay stealthy, and catch opponents when they're busy with objectives or enemies. When you become more comfortable with him, you can then start trying riskier tactics. That's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope this helped you out whether you've been on the receiving end of a Doldren and didn't know how to counter him, or if you were saving up some gold to buy him and try him out yourself. His uses aren't applicable to every map, and I wouldn't exactly recommend him on missions where multiple enemies swarm you and your friends.
You know, I always end up losing with you.
But if you take the time to learn him well, he can become quite the efficient killer. And as always, I'll see you all on the Broken Planet.